Last one. We made it.
You made it.
School's about to start. We're through the summer.
Mm,
You guys ready?
no.
No, I'm not either.
Back to dropping off kids.
Actually,
every
I am.
morning.
I'm ready for my kids to get out of the house.
Oh, okay.
Get back.
Now you say
Get
that.
back
Yeah.
to school.
That's better, yeah. You're right.
The last episode, we are talking about something that, well, I'll just say 99% of churches do wrong.
Mm.
So we've got Guiselle, who works with our Spanish-speaking ministry,
Yeah.
West Bradenton in Espanol.
En español. Yep.
Yes. And then Davon, who
Hola.
is one of our outreach pastors who doesn't speak much Spanish.
A little bit. I've
Hola.
taught him some.
Right? I just
all-
said it.
We're all learning.
Yeah.
We're all learning.
Yes.
Hey, Spanish.
Alabemos juntos.
Yeah, that's what she lost me.
Come on, I've trained you on that one.
We have many Spanish speakers in our church, and we're glad that you help bridge that divide because language is a very real barrier. But Giselle's done a good job of helping us break those barriers down, which actually goes along with what we're talking about
Yeah.
today. We are on the 7th part of our covenant, which is share. So worship, grow, serve, give, pray, seek unity, and share. We should share our faith. And this is what 99% of churches are doing wrong. Only 1% of churches have an ongoing evangelism emphasis. That's a study that was done recently. And if you think about it, they're talking within the United States. Only 1% of churches are doing this programmatically, regularly, rhythmically, of getting people out there doing evangelism. Now, you are the outreach pastor here
Yes.
at West Bradenton.
So I better know a lot about this.
You,
right?
well, you should. You should.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing and why you're doing it.
I'm an evangelist, basically. I would say for me, the emphasis on when I first got saved was ultimately sharing what God did for me and how could I reach others. And then when I read Matthew 28:19, I'm like, oh, we're supposed to do this. Like we're supposed to go out and share the faith, right? And the first thing it says, go, therefore.
Yeah.
It's like ultimately. So, I pretty much, I ministered just even last night. I ministered at a basketball game. It was a in between time during halftime, and they're like, "Hey, come share the gospel and draw people to Christ in 5 minutes." And I'm like, "Okay," and it worked. We had like 11 people get saved. So, going out and being among the people ultimately is what Christ desires, and that's what He did.
Yeah.
Ultimately. So if we're going to be like Him, that's the main thing that you should be focused on.
Now, Guiselle, you have a ton going on in your life. I mean, obviously, you're part of our team here at the church. You have run businesses, started businesses, bit of an entrepreneur. Your mom, you homeschool correctly. I mean, this you do a lot. It's amazing. I don't know how you do it all. And then you help us with just language issues here. And cultural issues too. I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like we're doing a fairly good job of beginning to bridge some of the cultural divides here. But even something like, we say Spanish speaking or Spanish speaking background. Well, we have 15 countries-ish, somewhere around that, represented
Yeah.
here.
It's a good bit of countries.
You have 3 in your family: Honduras, Venezuela, and then United States.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because you're kids. So even in your own home, there's 3 there.
Right.
Talk a little bit about what that looks like just culturally within a church that's, hey, we're going to reach our community. 45% of our community is ethnic minority, whatever that means. It means, 45% are either Black or Hispanic. And I understand, what do those terms mean and who identifies as those terms. I'm just trying to talk generally. So help us understand the importance of that in a church and why we should be doing it and perhaps how we can do it better.
I think we're on the right track. We're doing so many things to just kind of bring the church, English-speaking, Spanish-speaking, together. And just the fact that there's intention in that is what facilitates it and helps us to be on the right track. Now, just within the Spanish ministry, there is, I want to say, probably about 5 or 6 countries represented within our small Spanish ministry.
Yeah, and that's just South America.
South America, Central America. So,
And we got to throw the islands in there too, because we have Cubans.
Cubans. Yeah. Well, I still count
And
that
Puerto
in as
Ricans.
kind of
Oh, no, they
Central
count.
America. Yeah.
He's
I
like,
didn't say they
no, I'm
don't
just kidding.
count.
I'm
They
messing with
count,
you.
of course.
I'm messing with you.
But yeah, I want to say, I mean, we have Hondurans, we have people from Ecuador, we have people from Venezuela, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras. I mean, there's a
Cuba, Puerto Rico.
big variety within our Spanish
Brazil.
ministry. Brazil, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that, yes, the language unites us, but even within that, there's so many different little cultural differences that we do have to take into account when planning like bilingual services, when planning events and planning even the outreach part. So much to take into consideration than just the language aspect.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
It's not like universally celebrated by.
It's really not. It's
That's an
really
inside
not.
joke
I am
we
with
a-
had
our
to learn.
team.
Yeah, we had to learn
Yes.
that.
It's
Yeah.
Mexican independence that
but it's really not.
I know, like a lot of Mexicans don't even really celebrate. It's just kind of a cultural thing that other countries don't even necessarily.
That's an
recognize.
American thing. We
It
don't.
is an American
we don't
thing.
know.
It is.
We
It's a
don't-
day
yeah.
to eat tacos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do. We love.
Who's gonna turn
we
that
love
down? Though?
tacos.
Like, yeah,
I mean,
it
it's
works.
okay to
Right,
eat
yeah.
tacos. That's a good thing. The
Yeah.
Mexican food is good. Mexican music is good.
Yes.
But we are not all Mexican.
That's another.
That
thing.
is a big
Yeah.
U.S. thing too.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah, and for churches, and for those of you maybe tuning in, that is an important thing to understand that Venezuelan culture is different than Honduran culture.
Yep.
And you have to kind of, and I would just say ask.
Mhm.
Like if people are from wherever, I mean, we have people from all over the world here who go to our church. Just don't be afraid to ask. Be like, hey, tell me about your culture. Tell me why you do what you
Yeah.
do. I think people can tell that you're genuine. And, I love learning about different cultures, different aspects of culture. You grew up in an urban culture, urban Baltimore.
Yeah.
It's very different than like suburban Dallas.
Right.
So just, and you pointed me to a documentary. You said, hey, if you kind of want to understand how I grew up, there's a documentary out there. You show me, it's on Amazon. And I watched that documentary. I was like, it helped me understand a little better about what you grew up in.
Right.
I don't know if there's a documentary about Honduras that I should watch, but
No, but I do. I mean, that book that you let me borrow once,
the Third Culture
the
book.
Third Culture book, was actually really enlightening to me because I had never thought of it that way, of being like my family is full Honduran culture. I was born in the U.S., raised in the U.S., and it's kind of like you're in the middle of trying to fit into the two.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
You create
But
your own
yes.
third culture.
absolutely.
Um,
Yes.
If you grow up in
It was a good-
if you have a strong influence from a different country or even a different culture, and then you live a long time in another culture, a lot of
Mhm.
times you combine those two cultures into a third culture, and your kids especially are like pure third culture
Right.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen that with your children. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's beautiful actually
Yeah.
because they can move in and out just like
Mm-hmm.
fluidly between different cultures and languages even, which is just awesome. We just recently baptized your daughter,
Yes, we did.
and I spoke in English, and then your husband Adrian baptized her in Spanish.
He did. Yeah.
And for her, that was just normal.
right.
It wasn't weird at all. That was just normal, but it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. That's part of what we're trying to do here, and that's part of what I think every church should do is understand your community.
Mm-hmm.
Who's in your community? How do you reach them? How can you share Jesus with them?
And I think that we're at our church, we're doing a really good job of equipping even our kiddos and students in that. And the fact that we have bilingual kids and students just kind of widens our reach. We can, it's important even for future of the church to equip our kids for outreach, to invite to church, to talk about Jesus, to this is fundamental. And so the fact that we have English speakers, Spanish speakers, bilingual, they feel comfortable with different cultures, and that we're teaching them this is what is norm, go out and talk about Jesus, go out and invite people to church. Like, imagine our reach within the community. So I think that's a pretty great thing that we're doing here in the church.
Now, Davon, you're always sharing your faith with multiple groups
Right.
of, places in our community that are honestly harder to get into, harder to reach. Even some young people who some might have given up on. You have said no. I'm going to be there for them, and you've done a very good job of that. But I want to talk a little bit about you fostered.
Yes.
And your family's been a foster family for
A long time.
And adopting a son as well. Tell us about that journey just briefly, and like how that plays into this idea of, hey, we need to share our faith. How does fostering connect to let's share our faith?
Fostering for us was based around us sharing our faith. I was working with young people at the time, and some of them were a part of the ministry that I was, overseeing. And we had a young man who was he was turning 18, and he was in the foster system, but he was aging out. And he's like, I don't know how to do a checkbook. I don't know how to run a bank account. I don't know any of these things. And so we just said, okay, we're going to help you do this. And he's like, man, you guys should really consider helping. There's so many kids that need help, right? That don't know faith and all of these different things. And so he shared with us, his experiences, and through our faith, it was kind of like a perfect combination. And throughout the years, that's really what it's been all about. It's been about, just making sure that we're able to bring kids in and have them be a part of the faith. And we've had different cultures, like our son is white, right? Like, and we've had multiple, which was a weird thing in Maryland for a black family to have white kids, but we're that family, right? Like, it's happened multiple times. And so there's been big differences in culture with the families. And so it's been just one big, and that kind of shaped who I am as a minister. So I'm able to go to so many different places to speak to so many different people, because my experiences have been shaped through just having that direct interaction with people within my home. So it's important.
And my wife and I fostered, and we ended up adopting a child out of the foster system, and he's black.
Right.
So white family, black son.
Yeah.
And there have been things that I've needed to rely on you.
Oh, likewise.
It's like, help me understand this, black culture, just things like hair care, just things that you just don't know until you actually just have to do it.
Poor Dylan was burned the first day at the beach. We were like, oh no, we need to put sunscreen. Yeah, we learned that really quick.
But I think that's a beautiful part of our church,
right.
Is like, my son, and you have teenage sons.
Yeah.
My son's elementary age.
Right.
But he really looks up to your boys.
Right.
Part of it's skin color.
Right.
He has role models in our church to look up to, young black men who he can say, that I can aspire to be that. And so your sons are an important part, even though I don't hang out with your sons a ton, and they're in college age now. But my son looks up to them. And so part of us just reaching our community, understanding our culture, sharing Christ, is sharing our families as well.
Right.
Like, it would be more difficult for me to raise my son without your help. And it would be very difficult for me to reach just myself, the Spanish-speaking community, without Pastor Jesus, without you, Guiselle. And I think part of sharing the gospel is also sharing culture, sharing families, all of us being in this together.
Yeah, it's important. Like, when you say the church, I think people kind of get it misconstrued. The church is us. Right. We are the church. So sometimes people look and say, okay, they're depending on the church to set a standard or a program of how that looks, the outreach and going out. Just as simple as your job, right? Like, the guy who you may not talk to because it's not the comfortable, we have our bubbles of people we interact with, right? And someone may be different in certain ways. And to be intentional about actually connecting with other people who don't think like you think, that don't, look like you look. That's important just in general as the church. That's the only way we can actually spread the gospel and share the gospel, by being willing to go outside of our, comfort zones.
So a church that does not share Jesus will ultimately die.
Yes.
Right.
That's the bottom line. But evangelism will not die in your church if you do it. So if you're wondering, like, is my church dying? Are we doing what we should be doing? Hear me out. And I don't want to set us up as like the model. I'm just very proud of our church and very glad what we're doing. And I think we've got a lot of good people. We certainly have plenty of areas to improve. So I don't want to set us up as like, hey, we're the 1% doing it right. But the reality is, and the stats are not wrong, the vast majority of churches don't have any sort of ongoing evangelism emphasis. But if you're sitting there going, well, that's a problem, and my church is really struggling, evangelism will not die in your church if you do it.
Okay.
So all of us have a responsibility.
Yes.
We all have an individual responsibility while relying on each other as a collective whole. Guiselle, I'll give you the last word. What excites you? I mean, you've got, at the time of this recording, you've got a big trip coming up. You guys kind of live on mission. Like you're one of those families, like your life is a mission trip. I don't know if that's a fair way to describe it, but it's kind of like that.
I have a big heart for serving, for sure. And I try to pass that down to my kids as well. And one thing that made me love in West B is that there's also a big heart for serving here. I feel like we've been able to get involved in not only, because missions isn't just going out, like going to other countries and serving, but here, like you say, our address dictates who we serve and why we're here. God put us here for a reason. And I think that our missions team, our Pastor Tim, he does a great job at giving our church, and our church is our people, like you say, not just the building, but our people, good opportunities to serve. You're not able to go out, that's okay. Well, let's serve here. Let's serve foster families. Let's go. We have this event. Let's go out and let's invite to these events. And we involve our kids and we involve our students. And there's so many opportunities to serve here. So I love that. When we're here, we just dig deep in all the things and serve as much as we can. And we do travel a lot and find places to serve elsewhere. And it brings me joy to be able to help others. And I think, too, that sometimes, a lot of the times, I know some people are big on straight going to evangelize, knocking on doors and talking, and that's a good thing. I think that when we are able to fulfill a physical need, it opens a door and helps you to kind of build a relationship to where that person's a little more receptive to hear what you have to share and to hear a little bit more about Jesus. And so, just when we travel international or even kind of local, looking for ways to connect with families and being able to serve not only the physical need, but also that spiritual need of, hey, we all need Jesus. And this is just a way for me as an individual and with my family to be able to serve that.
Well, there you have it. Thank you all. This has been a 9-episode journey through the summer. We've had a good time. I hope you have had a good time as well. Your church address is not an accident. God has sovereignly placed you where you are so that you will reach the people around you. Your home address is not an accident. Why do I have the neighbors that I have? Why are they crazy? Maybe you're the crazy neighbor. I don't know. The reason that you are where you are is so that you will share Christ with the people around you. Such an important part of our culture, such an important part of what the church should be doing. This does conclude our Real Talk and Hot Takes series of episodes. Again, I'm Sam, lead pastor of West Bradenton Baptist Church. You can check us out at westb.org. If you're in the Bradenton area, please join us. And if you're just tuning in and enjoying these episodes, give us a thumbs up, give us a comment, subscribe to the channel. We would love to have you interacting with our content more often. And we'll just have to see what the future holds. These episodes all went fairly well, so perhaps we'll be putting some more out in the near future. But for now, we'll give Wes, our producer and editor, a break because he has been very busy this summer. Certainly want to give a big thank you to the great Wesley Hamilton.
Woo! Thanks, Wes.
He did a ton of work on all of this stuff. And he's been behind the camera and behind his computer and locked away in that room that is a closet, that is this room, for far too long. Get out and get some sun, all right? Get you a tan. We'll check you guys later.